Hi, in today's podcast, Mike and I are going to be talking about a very important topic, emotional intelligence, also known as the emotional quotient, which was coined by Mr. Daniel Goleman, who in late 80s had synthesized this process of people and how they react to different situations, and he created the concept of what we see today as emotional intelligence. Hi, friend. My name is Bernie from Tiger Resilience, and I specialize in behavioral health and personal development.
And my name is Michael, and I specialize in physical health and personal development.
And together we make Tiger Resilience, where our primary goal is to help you reach your human potential. And then today's topic is really an important one because we're talking about one of the four quadrants of the human condition that we refer to in our program, body, mind, heart, and spirit. We are now on the EQ version of this, and that is our emotional intelligence or emotional quotient. Just to recap, there are four separate ones: IQ, which most people are familiar with, and that's our intelligence and also our mind and mindset. Then we have physical intelligence, PQ, followed by SQ as a spiritual quotient or a consciousness. And of course, what we're talking about today, which is EQ, and that's our emotional intelligence. So let's take a look at a quick definition. Emotional intelligence, also known as the emotional quotient, is the ability to understand, use, and manage our own emotions in positive ways to relieve stress, communicate effectively, empathize with others, overcome challenges, and diffuse conflicts. So in a nutshell, it is how we respond to the world and how we respond to our own internal stimuli. Those thought processes that kick in and make us have that certain emotion or feeling. And it's all part of our human condition growing up in our development. And for parts of that, understanding how important this is in our lives, both from professional and personal, is really, it's imperative to know this. And it's also important to learn some skill sets if you're struggling with your emotions. So I'll touch base quickly, some of the challenges in both professional and personal. So I am working with a family right now that is having a communication issue. And it's because they're not listening to each other, and that response is creating a lot of emotional conflict, and there's a lot of anger with each other. And so everyone is becoming reactive. They're not sitting down to listen to each other. And that challenge in that family relationship is pretty self-evident. Their emotional intelligence needs to be worked on. And for them, for the most part, it is their response and their communication skills in listening to each other. Having that empathy, by the way, too, because that's a big piece of communication. We'll talk about that shortly. And then the other piece in a professional life, well, you work with people all day long. And how we interact with people is how we are perceived. And if you want to have that appropriate perception of yourself in the world, it's how you respond to your colleagues, to your superiors, whatever your work situation might be. And I can say that for certain, I work in healthcare field in a hospital setting, psychiatric hospital specifically, that we just opened up just a few months ago. And in that setting, we have a very high volatile situation with a lot of factors between nursing, medical, the psychiatrists, the clinicals. And when people are not being very mindful of how they're responding, they can create their own problems, and I'm referring to the team, the staff, the clinical team, the treatment team within each other. And I have seen this happen time and time again, where people, again, are being more reactive. Mike, how about you? What can you share about your experiences dealing with emotional intelligence from both your personal and your professional life?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the topic. It's something that, I didn't have a ton of familiarity with, just in terms of like kind of the clinical definition, but also just all the, ins and outs of the idea of emotional intelligence or EQ. I think one of the things that, I initially thought of when, I heard the term emotional intelligence was kind of like a level of maturity. But, after kind of going into the, nitty and gritty research of the word itself, I kind of, developed a different understanding, I guess, of it. For me personally, I think emotional intelligence is something that, when I had mentioned in a former podcast, I started doing counseling. That was something that I really wanted to improve after kind of looking into what it is. It's, I think the ability to react to situations in certain ways and to control, your emotions in a sense, depending on the context of a situation. So, as it pertains to, both your professional and personal life, I felt like it was something that I really wanted to improve myself. Of course, we can all improve in every facets of life, but that specifically was something that I felt like would be a really big help if I could, kind of, not temper emotions, but yeah, change my ability to react to certain situations and improve emotional intelligence. So, I think even going through the topic itself and just the breakdown of it, when I was researching it, the topic, seeing the 5 components, self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, social skills. These were all things that, of course we use on a day-to-day basis and we're aware of, but, it's sometimes something where don't necessarily consider if you're, actually implementing these in a proper way. And, going through each of them, I was like, what, these are things that I absolutely feel like I could improve my day-to-day life, with especially my personal relationships. And, having that kind of guideline and a framework to operate on is, super key, as opposed to kind of just assuming something based on, your ability to improve in it or not. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting topic. Obviously, not as well versed as my dad in the the clinical mental health field, but it's something that I want to continue to find more about and continue to ingratiate myself with and learn more, essentially.
The thing that you mentioned that was kind of impactful there is that, you were mentioning that my background in the behavioral health and the clinical side of this, that there's this correlation between, well, those who are clinically experienced with this versus the person who is not. And the truth is, it's one of the same, one, of course, in my background, having the more experience and understanding of this from a different perspective, a different paradigm per se, because of who I work with, the population, and so on. But it's really a human condition, So let's think about this as what is mental health, right? Mental health is our state of how we see it. It's a state of our well-being. It's a state of our personal mindset of how am I today? What am I doing today? How am I responding to the world? And this is what emotional intelligence is really at the core of, because people who are being reactive to the world, in other words, you have the stimuli and response. So we have the world over here, and then we have ourselves here. And between those two is the space. And in that space lies our freedoms, and it also lies our bondage. It lies where our happiness is or our misery, based on what we do in that space. And that's where emotional intelligence is at its core, because in that space, with emotional intelligence and understanding, self-regulation, the ability to ground yourself, the ability to have empathy, the ability to take a 2-second break and just listen. That is the difference between the outcomes between life, what happens, and then us on the other side, and it determines our outcome. So in a nutshell, that's really what mental health and EQ is about. It's our response to the world and our response to our internal stimuli. And what is internal stimuli? That's everything from our memory banks from our entire childhood. Oh my gosh, this happened to me when I was 7 years old. This kid bullied me. And I bring that up, and all of a sudden I have this anger and resentment for it because I never did anything about it. Or these are constructs that people do all the time. And the problem is that when you get sucked up into that, it just causes chaos and problems with your present life. And that's the biggest piece of emotional intelligence, is staying present and understanding how you're responding to the world in many ways. So one of the other metaphors that was coined by somebody who I really have the utmost respect for, and a lot of our program has the principles based on some of his work, and that was Stephen Covey, who famously came out with the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And really what the basis of it was core principles to the human condition. And he developed these between 3 internal and 3 external factors. The 3 internals is knowing ourselves, and then our relationship to the world. And it went in sequence that way because we have to do this first before we do the world out there. And one of the things I loved about this metaphor that he worked with was a bank account. And it's referred to as the emotional bank account. And this is emotional intelligence at its finest. How do we define emotional bank account? So if I'm taking my wife and I, or maybe Mike and I, as a father-son team, but I'm going to use my wife Valerie at the time for this. So between the two of us, for me to make deposits into her emotional bank account is what helps build our healthy relationship. And then when I screw something up, I do something wrong, I make a mistake, or I neglect doing something I should have done, I'm withdrawing from that bank account, right? And it's always this ebb and flow of life, just like a regular bank account. We have this positives and negatives. And the goal is to always make sure you have enough positives versus the negatives. And that's really what's important. And that's what emotional intelligence is. And for her, there's very specific things that are considered deposits. And by the way, the big piece to this is that you have to understand what a deposit is to that individual. Because what I think might be a deposit for her, like going out and, blasting the sidewalk to clean it with a power washer, has nothing to do with emotional deposits for her. Though I would say, hey, I'm getting the sidewalk nice and clean and, nice clean house. That has no relevance to her. But little things like making coffee, in the morning, or emptying the dishwasher first thing in the morning before she gets up, or little things like that, those are the things that I know for her work as emotional deposits, so that I have this account. And this works with all of us across the board. So that truly is one great, simple way to understand what emotional intelligence is and how to utilize it in all of our relationships. This isn't just personal. This is also in our business and professional relationships. My relationship with my medical team, the nursing team, with all of these deposits are based on the relationships with them, and they all have these different levels. And that's one really important way to think about this. So at the end of the day, that's what emotional intelligence is. It's our ability to respond to our own stimuli and the world around us with a proactive or a controlled mindset, self-regulation. That is truly what it is. In mental health, self-regulation for those who struggle with a mental health condition, whether it's schizoaffective, bipolar, and we work with a lot of people, schizophrenia itself, they're not able to deal with their emotional regulations. And so when they get a feeling of outburst, they react on it right away. Working with a patient right now, and she will explode in a matter of a second screaming because she has no ability right now educationally and also from her biology to be able to control her emotions. So, but for all of us in the regular world, for the most part, we have that capacity. So Mike, why don't you talk about one of the things now? I want to kind of correlate this to physical health, because this is Mike's wheelhouse, and this is something that he's really good. And we were talking about this, is how physical health and emotional well-being are so important and how they work together.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned, obviously it's not a topic that I was super knowledgeable in, but one of the other things that was definitely going to be of keen interest to me was kind of how it correlates, emotional intelligence and the ability to improve it with also your physical well-being. So, specifically with, physical activity and exercise. And kind of through my, research on it, and of course my personal experience with it, I've always, of course, found that physical health does profoundly improve my, emotional well-being. So, anytime that I am feeling down, oftentimes a workout and a hard workout is something that I always would gravitate towards and immediately made me feel better. And of course, there is some, science behind that in terms of increased endorphins from working out specifically, which, briefly mentioned too in former podcasts about mental health and, exercise's ability to improve that. But the same applies to, your emotional well-being as well, that, regular exercise absolutely will boost your mood. And reduce things like stress and anxiety and, various things that people might be going through. And, just again, your ability to improve your emotional intelligence. And even in this research too, I kind of, found a few studies that, I wanted to look through just to, I guess, in a sense, validate maybe my, thoughts on it. Because again, I felt like exercise absolutely always did improve my emotional well-being. And a few that I kind of found was, essentially proving that point where there was oftentimes a positive association between physical activity and emotional intelligence. And generally, when you have higher physical activity, there's more of an indication that there'd be a higher level of emotional intelligence and, regulation of that. We mentioned the self-regulation part, which is, your ability to regulate your emotions depending on a situation. And so, being physically active and fit can absolutely improve that. And there's obviously different subscales of emotional intelligence as well. So, like we're saying with self-awareness too, that being linked to, exercise and activity and just being better equipped to engage in things. I think when you do something pretty difficult like exercise, it almost like in a sense does help your ability to be better equipped to engage with, certain situations that might involve a bit of emotion or maybe prior instances where you would have reacted in a different way. So it's really interesting that if exercise can have some kind of level of effect on that and improving those things, I think is absolutely amazing. And I ultimately too, I think just promoting healthier lifestyle choices, in conjunction with consistent exercise habits and a good diet. Those are things that are always going to lend themselves to helping improve EQ, and again, your ability to regulate your emotions and react to situations in a specific way. And of course, with the body itself, sleep being a super big thing. So sleep helping improve your mood, reducing cortisol, which is your stress hormone, and that being such a big factor, of course, of someone's ability to, again, emotionally regulate and react to certain situations. And too, I mean, just from a strategy standpoint, I think mentioning again exercise and diet practices, but even things like incorporating some mind body practices. So things that I currently don't do, but like yoga, tai chi, things that are really going to allow you to also kind of mentally get into a different space, I think can be super useful. Of course, those things can still be done too with resistance training or running, walking, swimming, biking, etc. All these things that will help raise endorphins and give you that kind of euphoric feeling that we've talked about before. So yeah, I think it's something that's absolutely fascinating. Again, that the impact that exercise can have on EQ. I think I'm sure there will be further research done in the future, and obviously people's personal experiences with it, myself included. And I couldn't recommend it enough in terms of that correlation and its ability again to improve it. So
A couple of the takeaways there really is understanding the factor of physical health and endorphins, and another one that was really big was the sleep. And there's no question about it that our bodies are a battery, and if that battery is not charged, we are going to be draining and straining it. And anyone who has had a computer, laptop, a phone that has gotten down to that bare minimum of battery that you only got a couple of seconds of life left, that's truly us. And when we're in that state or condition, we are always reactive, even with the best of us, with having the most empowered emotional regulation. When you're at that state, you're vulnerable. You're not going to be at your strength. So that was a great point, having the sleep piece to it too as well. And of course, the runner's high, right? I mean, the runner's high is a true and actual thing. Having neurotransmitters that kick off, the norepinephrine, and that just starts rocking off in your brain because you're bringing in this excitement with oxygen and this cardiovascular aspects. And not only that, but the other piece that's really important to physical health is that it's also a discipline. So there's a discipline with emotional intelligence, understanding how to respond to situations in your life, how to be able to deal with them is being proactive. And that's part of what having a discipline is, understanding the world around you. If you're coming into work, per se, and there's some situation you have to work with, getting right on top of that right away is important. That's emotional intelligence. If I come home and my wife is upset, she had a bad day, how I work with her and respond to her is the level of my emotional intelligence. If I just kind of shrug it off or don't pay attention to it, again, remember the emotional bank account, well, I'm making withdrawals there. And then of course that emotional relationship will start to fracture, no question about it. So what are some things that we do that we can help? Now, Mike talked a lot about the exercise, and he is definitely the exercise king. There's no question that involving exercise, even if it's just getting out and walking, that's empowerment, and that's going to help you. You don't need to get on a treadmill and do 10 miles or go out and do a half marathon. Those are things you can, if you aspire to do it, you can work towards it. But just getting out and walking is definitely a step in the direction that will help you. Get some steps in because it's allowing your ability to clear your mind. So for myself, the way to prime emotional intelligence is by owning your morning. And when you own your morning, you own your day. When you own your day, you own your life. And so how do I own my morning? Well, simply is that when I get up, I have a ritual, a routine. And having that routine and being very, very steadfast on it all the time is what helps me regulate my emotions. And then part of that routine is mindfulness, where I just have time to kind of just be aware of my life at this moment. Where am I at this exact date, right? The meditation in terms is to know thyself, right? This is self-reflection. This is where that breathing exercises helps, because it clears the noise. Your mind is still going, but it clears the noise, and you can focus on just simple little thing like your breath, or a single point that you might be looking at, or if you're outdoors, which I like to do, sitting on a deck or sitting outside, is just to listen to nature and then just quietly filter out all the rest. That's what knowing yourself is about. That's what meditation really is. So having that ritual in the morning and having exercise first thing, even if it's, for me, I do some weightlifting a little bit, but if it's something that's just getting out and walking, Andrew Huberman talks about getting sunshine, and there's no question, not just for the circadian rhythm, but getting out and having sunshine is all components that will help you build your emotional intelligence, because it helps you feel good. When you feel good and you feel better, you have that opportunity to be a better person. And at the end of the day, this is what this is all about. How do we become better people? How do I improve myself tomorrow from the person I am today? And by doing that, simply, it's just being first aware of it, and then making that 1% incremental compound investment, which is just that little tiny one thing I did more. I did one more repetition on lifting some weights, or I did that one more step that I didn't do the last time. Those one little things, it's all it takes on a daily basis. And then through that, consistency. And again, going to Mike's point about the exercise and that discipline aspects, that's the piece of consistency. As a discipline, you get up and you do it, and then you do it. And if you miss a day, you miss a day. Make a promise to yourself, don't miss more than 2 days. And you got your second day, you get back into it, you get back up, and you keep going. So that's at the heart of developing emotional intelligence. That's how we self-regulate. That's how we stay grounded. That's how we deal with the world around us. That's how we build communication skills. This is how we effectively build our relationships, both personally and professionally. So these are great tools. Again, these are suggestions for you. They've been things that have worked for me for a very long time. There are things that I teach in all of my classes, groups, and some of our content that we do. I have some very specific steps on how that's done. If you'd like to learn more, please see the link below about our programs at Tiger Resilience, and you can learn how to incorporate these very specific steps into your life and how it can improve yourself too as well. And again, just doing it, the Nike thing, just get up every morning and just put your foot down on the floor and you just do it. So Mike, any thoughts, any kind of closing thoughts on, your points regarding the physical health piece?
No, yeah. I mean, I think you highlighted all of that. I like I said, I think it's a fascinating topic. It's just something that, I wasn't formally thinking about all the time. And, it's something that I really want to continue to, research myself, but also, be more cognizant of just, in the moment. So just how I feel like exercise is improving my emotional, regulation, externally from, whatever the session I'm doing at that time, and its ability to, help that over the long term, obviously in conjunction with other resources too. I want to say that exercise is obviously not alone the remedy to, help probably improve EQ for somebody, but it absolutely can be a very important tool, in that litany of resources.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I do have to apologize. I do have our dogs barking upstairs, so you may get a little dog bark onto this podcast. So I do apologize. Red-bone coonhounds tend to have their way of when they see things out and about. So, but again, to recap, again, this is emotional intelligence is your ability to respond to the stimuli both internally and externally. And it's the ability to stand back for a few seconds if things are just getting a little out of control in your life. Just take that breath, that 1 or 2 seconds just to breathe for a second and then relax for a moment and realize everything that happens in life is momentary. It is just a momentary piece in life, and you will get through these challenges that you may face. And of course, you will build upon your resilience with that too. Tiger Resilience at our programs, we really focus on doing just that, empowering people to reach their potential by building upon their strengths and then building upon that resilience and overcoming adversity. That's why we use the tiger and the phoenix as our metaphors in our programs, because it is the strength and the ability to rebound when you do have those challenges in life. And the two of them together create a powerful construct for a meaning in life, very much so. If you'd like to learn more about our program and our flagship program that'll be launching soon, please see the links below in our description. And if you would like to learn more about us or hear more about us, you can sign up for our newsletter. That link will also be below. And on that newsletter, every single week, we publish materials very much about like what we're talking about here now in this podcast. And it would be a great asset is you can subscribe, but you can also unsubscribe at any time. Just if you'd like to learn more about yourself and empowering yourself, I would encourage you to please consider liking that or clicking on that link and then joining our newsletter. And again, if you also like this podcast, please like this video so we can pay this forward to others who are also looking for some insight and struggling, especially from this dynamic of a father-son team that are coming also from two different views, because I'm taking it from the 50-plus view and my son is taking it from the 30-plus view. So we have these two very generational approaches to our content, which really helps us all, because there's areas where we're very unique and individual, and there's areas where we overlap a lot. So once again, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and your life to take a moment to watch our podcast. We'll look forward to speaking with you soon, very soon. And once again, I want to wish you and all of yours nothing but the best today, and work on your EQ today and just truly empower yourself. So thank you again and have a wonderful day.